So Dodge is embracing electric vehicles, and it turns out that, to my great surprise, they've actually marketed this in an incredibly good way, focusing on performance, focusing on how it is going to improve the car and improve the driving experience, rather than preaching to its customers about what those customers need to do to avoid being naughty boys and girls. I think that is by far the best approach to taking on EVs, particularly in many markets where consumers particularly detest being preached to. I'm going to go through Dodge's EV Summit video, and I'm going to react to it and explain why I think they've done an incredibly good job, and why I think this is a more successful strategy than some other companies that seem to be particularly engaged with and particularly enamored with excessive preaching and talking down to their customer base. So let's have a look at what they're doing, and if you have any thoughts about what Dodge is doing, do let me know that in the comments below. And I should probably mention, as an aside, I've set up a website called luxuryprofessor.com where I'm selling off a number of my watches. Go and check it out. I have some interesting things there for sale, such as an Omega Speedmaster, which you might find interesting. But otherwise, let's jump into the video and see what Dodge is doing.
We're here on location at the historic Dodge family home, with over 100 years of amazing Dodge heritage parked behind me.
So far, so good. This is a promising initial beginning to their effectively EV launch trailer, where they're trying to tie in the EVs to the heritage of Dodge. But of course, this could just be marketing spiel, so we do need to hear more.
And today is an important milestone, embracing the brand's history while looking to the future. The Dodge brand all but defines pure American muscle and was born to push the boundaries of horsepower. For over
This again is an even better beginning, because now they are effectively trying to link the EVs into performance, which I think is probably a smart move. And having this burnout is probably signaling to the audience that they're not going to be preaching to people about driving slowly or conserving energy or whatever. This is kind of signaling that they're all about performance and power.
100 years, at the core of everything we do, you'll find a foundation of American ingenuity. And pure performance has been the Dodge purpose.
Okay, so let's now look at their food triangle of performance here. Their slogan here is the most powerful brand in the industry, and then excess drives success, which is all very good. I think it is a little bit marketing speak, but it does tell us that they are moving toward EVs, not so much to preach to people, but more to try to make things better, which I think is probably a smart strategy, because there's a significant portion of the consumer demographic that abhors the preaching that is often going on in the environmental areas, so EVs, and in the ESG sector more generally. So I think this is a very smart strategy, and I would like to see more brands pursue it, to be totally honest. I think it works.
A century ago, Dodge hit full stride when we introduced the Charger and Challenger. They quickly became...
And again, drawing in the horsepower here of some of their more powerful models, so both of which are at around 800 horsepower. Again, telling us they are doing this for performance, or at least beneficial reasons, as opposed to try to slow things down and make things a little bit more tame and painful.
Icons of performance and attitude. Today, they set the benchmark by embracing ingenuity to push the performance envelope to deliver the most exciting and engaging muscle cars.
Now, one thing I do want to say at the moment is, as much as I do admire the approach that the Dodge program and Dodge CEO is taking here, the presentation isn't brilliant. It's a little monotonous. He kind of isn't having good body language. He's basically just standing there, rigid as a stick, and not really moving. I feel like they could have made that more dynamic, but to be fair, it's probably not really the type of video he normally makes.
And that's why Dodge will not sell electric cars. Dodge will sell American muscle.
This has all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, which is probably good, to be honest. I, as you can tell from my accent, am not American. I lived in America for probably about a year and a half in total, or thereabouts, and also have studied in America other than living there for that period when I was working. So I do have a huge amount of admiration for America. This does, however, strike me as being very over-the-top patriotic. You can see this in terms of the colors and the Dodge will sell American eMuscle. It's getting a little jingoistic, but
So
still.
if a charger can make a charger quicker, we're in. And while that may sound like a nuance, it's not to our customers anyways, because our customers purchase an experience, not a technology. And it may surprise you to learn that Dodge attracts one of the youngest and most diverse customers in the industry, with the highest concentration of millennials, who now account for 1/4 of the US population, with the highest spending power of any generation. And equally, if not more important, millennials also have the highest acceptance rate of EVs.
This strikes me as if he's speaking to effectively shareholders or stakeholders. Now, this might be a little bit unnecessary, given that Dodge is not necessarily answerable to shareholders in the general market sense, in that they have effectively a corporate structure. And this corporate structure means that they're kind of insulated from what an ordinary equity analyst might think, or what an ordinary shareholder might think. However, to some extent, I feel like he's trying to tie into the other part of the demographic. There are probably a couple of groups that are resistant to EVs for some reasons. You've got the people who have obviously resisted it for infrastructure reasons. I'll put that into one group because that's a valid concern that I feel like a lot of EV advocates don't address. But then amongst the other two groups, you've got resistance for two overarching reasons. One, you've got consumers who detest being lectured to and detest the condescending manner in which some EV advocates are pushing them. So, for example, you get into a debate with any EV advocate online, and you automatically get flamed every time you mention an issue associated with EVs. So that is automatically a problem that needs to be addressed, and they address this by avoiding being condescending. The second thing is those of us who are in business, who typically have to restrain our retch reaction when people start pontificating about these type of ESG things. Oftentimes they're not really tied to any form of business case. It's just kind of proselytizing in someone's pet field, in something that they feel passionate about. Here, I believe he's trying to head off that second group and establish that there is a good business case for moving this direction. That at least is my interpretation of why they're going down this route. Even though it's not directly necessary, it helps to corral that other crowd along as well.
That's why the convergence of a demographic with spending power and the adaptation of electric power creates the perfect gateway for a brand that's all about horsepower. The customer profile of the Dodge brand today will be a key enabler to getting muscle car buyers into EVs tomorrow. And EV technology will enhance the attributes that matter most to our customers. It's not unlike the formula we followed for over a decade as we continuously improve the Hemi power plant.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's well consistent with Dodge's approach here. Now let's just deviate for the moment on horsepower. A number of EVs have been incredibly quick. The Tesla Plaid models appear to be extremely quick, although it does appear that there are some limitations to this. Getting it set up in the stance to fully unleash all of the power in some of the Plaid models can take quite a while. And if you're just doing a drag race, and you factor in the time that it requires you to establish everything to unlock maximum power, then your car might not actually be that much quicker. But that's another issue entirely. And one can argue that launch control also runs into those issues. However, that notwithstanding, EVs have been incredibly quick. We're seeing this with some Teslas, but also with the higher end things like the Rimac or the Lotus Avaya. So it makes some sense why EVs would be getting involved, or at least hybrids. And we've seen Lamborghini and Ferrari go down the hybrid route, Aston Martin with the Valhalla. So hybrids are becoming also important. They're unleashing some of the benefits, i.e. the fast access to torque that EVs have.
And its power output. With every gain in horsepower, we delivered a gain in market share. But even for a brand that's known for pushing it a bit too far, we've pushed this pedal to the floor. Our engineers are reaching a practical limit of what we can squeeze from internal combustion innovation. They know, we know that electric motors can give us more. And if we know of a technology that can give our customers an advantage, we have an obligation to embrace it.
I again like the approach he's taking here, establishing that EVs are here to benefit the car experience, as opposed to being necessarily for the sake of it. I think that is an incredibly smart approach, and gets customers on board by telling them what customers gain directly from having an EV, rather than preaching to customers that they should do it so they avoid being naughty boys and girls. It's telling them that, well, we're having difficulties continuing improving the ICE engines, so the internal combustion engines. And as a result, there are diminishing returns here. I suspect they probably can get some more power out of internal combustion engines, but the incremental amount of cost and R&D involved in doing that probably exceeds the benefits. And they would benefit from, for example, doing a hybrid model, for example, like the Artura or the Valhalla, or going directly to total EVs, depending on your perspective about which one's going to be faster. And in any case, he definitely does make a good point here.
Whatever it takes to keep them in the lead. Again, we won't sell electric vehicles. We will sell more motors. Better, faster Dodges. Because Dodge doesn't view EV technology as a revolution, but instead as a natural evolution of the modern muscle car. Let's face it, car and muscle aren't changing, and modern has an obligation to. Dodge has made it this far by embracing evolution. And it's the same way the hammerhead shark has thrived at the top of the food chain. Evolution enabled it to become one of nature's most aggressive predators. But just as we did a half century ago, Dodge will embrace the sea of change in the marketplace to stand out by embracing electrification. Every ounce of technology we integrate will be done to amplify the elements that define not just Dodge, but the muscle car itself. And in 2024, Dodge will launch the world's first full battery electric muscle car.
I feel like that's a stretch as well. Like, it really depends on how you define muscle car, right? Like, granted, they're probably going to shove a electric engine into a version of the Challenger or the Charger or whatever. However, there are myriad brute force electric cars already out there. Or at least there are some. So I feel like this might be a little bit of a stretch, but anyway, let's just give them that. It depends on how you're defining muscle cars, I guess.
Through intelligent evolution, we expect to thrive and define the future of American muscle. To tear up the streets, not the planet.
Hold on a minute. Did we hear that right? Dodge is making an electric car?
We're talking hypothetical, right?
Surely you jest. Dodge? You mean the people who devised the legendary 426 Hemi and sunk it into a sublime missile? You mean the...
Now, this is a little bit self-congratulatory, but anyway, yeah, I'm not sure whether anyone's buying this ad, but it's entertaining.
Dodge that created the Hellcat Red Eye and the most powerful muscle car in the world? Makers of the 840 horsepower wheel-standing Demon? Why on God's green earth would Dodge ever build an electric car? Anybody? Any thoughts out there? Hello?
That is actually not a bad trailer, if we're totally honest there, when you kind of think about it overall. Alright, so that's a bit of a reaction to Dodge's decision to go down the EV route. I think they've probably taken one of the smartest approaches to doing this, particularly for a brand that is perhaps a little bit more tied toward ICEs than some other cars might be. And in particular by emphasizing what consumers gain from an EV, as opposed to lecturing them about why they should be doing an EV. I think that's incredibly smart. I also think that by tying it in to what a lot of Dodge consumers want, i.e. performance, and muscle cars, I think also is a very smart move. This is the type of move that would be analogous to say you were to look at a supercar manufacturer, Lamborghini, for example, going down the EV route. It's the type of rhetoric that Lamborghini, you could easily see them applying, by arguing that consumers benefit in terms of speed and power from going down the EV route, as opposed to sticking to ICEs. So I think that's very smart. Overall, I'm pleasantly surprised with Dodge's reveal video here. I think they've done a very good job trying to persuade people about why EVs are the path forward. Now, while it is that regulators might have been requiring this anyway, while it is that many people who are environmentally conscious might have wanted EVs anyway, this I think helps to convince that other part of the population that doesn't really care about that. And I think it's better to convince that population what's in it for them, as opposed to simply lecturing them and haranguing them for not agreeing with your point of view. So overall, I think Dodge did a very good job with this ad, although I do think their presenter was perhaps a little bit on the dry side. And in any case, those are my views on it. If you have any thoughts about Dodge's movement into EVs, let me know that in the comments below. I would be very interested to hear your thoughts as well. And otherwise, of course, check out my website, luxuryprofessor.com, where I'm selling some of my watches. It would be interesting to hear your thoughts about the watches there, and it would be great if you check them out. But otherwise, thanks a lot for tuning in. It would be great if you like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you for future videos as well. Bye!